Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Focal Points. Today, our special guest, the second time guest actually, is retired U.S. Air Force Major Tom Haviland, who has been conducting yearly surveys, global embalmer surveys, looking at the prevalence of these white fibrous anomalous clots that we were learning about more. Yeah, and as you can see, there you go. He just showed it on the screen there. But yeah, clearly not something we've detected really before 2020 at all. But what's breaking is Tom actually just presented and was invited by a state level funeral directors association, specifically at Tennessee, to present on these white fibrous clots. And we're going to show you some video evidence just proving just how many embalmers are actually seeing this, at an official conference like this. So before we have Tom speak here, we're going to show this quick video of his presentation and of the people acknowledging that they do indeed see this phenomenon.
Folks in here are actually doing active embalming right now. Raise your hands, leave your hands up, okay? Of those people, leave them up. And of those people that have doing active embalming, if you're seeing these white fibrous clots over the last few years, keep your hand up. If you're not seeing them, please put your hand down. Okay? It looks like there's still quite a few hands up in the room. That's interesting. Look around, folks, at your fellow embalmers. You see how many hands are up. And keep your hands up now. People that are other people in the funeral home, funeral directors who don't embalm, other staff, how many of you have seen the white fibrous clots as well? Because I know you wander into the, okay? So, a lot of hands up there. Okay.
So, Tom, tell us about this. What's happening here?
Yeah, as you said, Nick, I was running my survey last December. My survey partner, Laura Kasner, and I were running our 2024 Worldwide Embalmer Blood Clot Survey in December of 2024. And during that time, the president of the Tennessee Funeral Directors Association, Mr. Taylor Moore, actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, Tom, I'd love to have you come speak at our 2025 convention to all of our funeral directors and embalmers that attend the convention to talk about the clots." So I jumped on that right away. Said, "Wow, this is a golden opportunity." So I knew for the last 6 months this was going to happen, and it finally took place last weekend, the 8th of June. I went to Franklin, Tennessee, about 15 miles south of Nashville, and they had at a big Marriott. They had their annual convention in a conference center there at the Marriott Cool Springs in Franklin, Tennessee. And what was interesting is the night before I was to speak, Saturday night, there was a reception for about 2 hours, Nick. And when we went there, I talked to about 60 people were in that room at the reception. About half of them were embalmers and funeral directors. So that was great. So I got a chance to talk to them. I walked around the room. I actually brought my clots with me. I showed them this one here, that Richard Hirschman has sent to me, and also this larger one here that Hirschman sent to me as well. And I asked people at that reception, have you seen the white fibrous clots? One of the very first embalmers I ran into, Nick, actually pulled out his phone and said, "Well, here's one that I pulled out of somebody just last month in May." So I knew I was probably going to have a friendly audience, because from the embalmers and funeral directors I was talking to, they were nodding their head up and down. Most of them were. A few of them actually came up to me and said, "Not only am I coming tomorrow to listen to you speak, my wife wants to come too," because they're interested in this as well. In fact, one of the wives of the embalmers actually works in a Tennessee hospital, and she's been seeing unusual things in her Tennessee hospital. So she was anxious to come and listen to my speech as well. There was one older gentleman, when I first showed him the clots, he said, I said, "Are you seeing the white fibrous clots?" He said, "You mean the chicken fat clots?" I said, No. Chicken fat clots, which we all know the embalmers have been seeing forever, they were pre-COVID. They're much smaller. They're yellowish in color. They tear very easily. Much, much different than these large white fibrous clots, that are tough, rubbery, hard to break even with forceps. So what was interesting is after I gave my speech the next day, that gentleman actually changed his tune. He came up and said, "I'm so glad you came to talk to us." So it was like he was acknowledging that, yeah, there is a difference between these white fibrous clots and the traditional chicken fat clots. So Sunday came around, and there was other speeches during the day. They were talking about things like the customer's always right. Like, they want to make sure that when there's a funeral happening, that the family of the deceased, any requests that they make, they try to make the funeral service as perfect as possible. There was other discussions like how to add humor into a funeral service, because it's kind of healthy sometimes for us to tell funny stories about the deceased and laugh in the midst of all this tragedy. It helps us, those that are surviving, cope with the loss of their loved one. But then a lot of people paid attention during my briefing. I think the room was jam-packed. There was 60 people in the room, and about half of those people in that room were embalmers or funeral directors. So that's when I asked the question, as you saw in the video. The first thing I asked is for them to raise their hands if they were embalmers. And then I asked them to lower their hands if they hadn't seen the clots, right? But to keep their hands raised if they were still seeing the white fibrous clots. And as you saw, I guessed about a third of them lowered their hands, but about 2/3 of them kept their hands raised, saying that they were seeing the white fibrous clots. And what's interesting about that is during the day, I ran a paper survey with them, and I let them anonymous. They could fill it out, and then I had them put it in a box. And then that evening, I counted up the survey, and basically it corroborated what we just saw in the video. So let's go through that in a minute. Here, if you advance to the next slide. Basically, 28 people took the paper survey that I gave at the presentation, and of those, 3 were funeral directors only. They don't do any embalming. 3 of them are embalmers only. They don't do any funeral directing, but 22 of them actually do both. They're funeral directors and they're active embalmers. So out of the 28 people that responded to this survey, 25 of them actually are doing active embalming right now. Next slide.
Right.
So we asked them the critical question again, have you seen the white fibrous structures, clots in the veins and or arteries of your corpses during the first half of 2025? Remember, the last survey that Laura and I did was at the end of 2024. So we were very interested to see this is our first look, basically, at what embalmers around the world are seeing in the first half of this year, 2025. As you can see there, 18 of the 28 said, yes, I'm seeing the white fibrous clots. That's 64%, Nick.
So that's the majority.
I know. And it has been for the full, 3 years, 4 years that we've been running this survey. It's
right.
Anywhere between 2/3 to like 80% of the embalmers in each of our surveys are saying they're seeing these white fibrous clots. So it is the majority of embalmers around the world that are seeing this phenomenon.
And this was in person, right? So these are like, this is confirmed embalmers, right? So we know now for sure it is a majority that are seeing these white fibrous clots.
Right on. So obviously the next natural question is, okay, what percentage of your corpses have got these white fibrous clots? As you can see there, the average, if you average all the bars together, including the green bar, where 5 said they saw none, you get an average of 17% of the corpses in the first half of 2025 containing the clots. Now that is down from the 27% that we had in our last worldwide survey that we did last December. So hopefully that's a trend in the right direction, right? Now, this is a small sample size, though, right? The worldwide survey had 301 embalmers responding. This one only had 28 embalmers responding. So, but hopefully it's a trend in the right direction. Next slide. So then we asked him, this is a new question we asked Nick. We asked, what's the longest white fibrous structure clot that you've seen removed from a corpse in 2025? And you see there, 9 of the embalmers said a white clot between 1 to 2 inches long. 7 of them said a clot between 3 to 5 inches long. 5 of them said a white fibrous clot between 6 to 12 inches long. And there was even one embalmer that said he found a clot that was over 12 inches long. Wow. Wow. So I'm glad I asked that question. I'll probably put that on the worldwide survey coming up at the end of this year, because we're going to run another one. We're going to keep running them until the CDC and the FDA finally acknowledges that this is a problem.
Right. Rightfully so.
Yeah. Another new question we asked this time was, has a family member of the deceased ever asked you to look for the white fibrous clots in their loved one, or asked if you found the white fibrous clots in their loved one in 2025 or any year prior? And as you can see, only 1 of the 28 responding said that a person's ever asked them about that, which surprised me a little bit. but not too much because, first of all, a lot of people probably don't know about the white fibrous clots because we're still trying to get the information out there. Also, somebody who does know about it may be too embarrassed to ask the embalmer because it's a touchy time. You're grieving over the loss of a loved one. Also, there may be nothing unusual about the death, right? So there may be no reason to be suspicious if they died in any unusual way. But then there's also the possibility, though, that people may know about the white fibrous clots, may suspect that, somebody, a loved one, had a stroke or heart attack because of the clots, but they're in denial, right? They don't want to ask the embalmer because they're afraid of the answer they might get from the embalmer, especially if they push their loved one to take the shots.
Right. Right.
So,
Exactly.
Yeah. So then we asked, have you seen any evidence of micro-clotting, also known as coffee grounds or dirty blood, in the drainage from the corpses in 2025? 19 of the embalmers said they were seeing the micro-clotting. That's 70%, which is dovetails pretty closely to what our worldwide surveys have been shown in the last few years as well. Next slide. Then we asked them, what percentage of the corpses have you seen the micro-clotting coffee grounds in 2025? Again, that if you do a weighted average, you get about 17% of the corpses in the first half of 2025 containing the micro-clotting. As we said before, this is a phenomenon embalmers had seen prior to COVID, but in much less than 5% of their corpses, particularly patients that had heavy chemotherapy. But so this is at least a tripling, to a quadrupling of this particular phenomenon as well. And this could be equally as dangerous as the white fibrous clots, right? Because it occurs at the capillary level, blocks your very small blood vessels, and it blocks the exchange of oxygen to the lung, and the carrying of that oxygen to all your major organs in your bodies, like your brain, your eyes. That's why people might be getting brain fog and having vision problems from micro-clotting going on.
Right. So 17% had the micro-clots, and also about 17% had the white fibrous.
Yes, exactly. So that's both a downtrend from our worldwide surveys last year. But again, I have to caveat that by saying this is a small sample size, 28 versus 301. So it'll be interesting to see. And I'm hoping that is the trend. I'm hoping at the end of the year when I run the survey for the end of 2025 here in November and December, that we'll see a similar reduction worldwide. And that'll mean, and that actually is to be expected somewhat, right? Because using the Bradford-Hill criteria of reversibility, if the COVID vaccines are the cause of these clots, then as we get further and further away from people taking their last jabs, most people took their last jabs way back in 2021 and passed on the boosters. Once you remove the cause, the effect should go away, right?
Right, exactly. So it's a positive that it is going down, but it does reflect that it is a possibility because only less than 20% of people are taking these boosters. And so, we should, if it is indeed linked to the shots, should see a decrease in these clots over time. And we really do hope we do. And these are not propagating into the environment, which are some concerns that have been raised.
Well, and another caveat we have to put there, though, is if the spike protein is continuing to, or the mRNA is continuing to produce a spike protein, even though the person took their shots 4 years ago, that could be a problem, right? So if we still see high percentages in the years going forward, that could be an indication that like I said, a person's turned into a spike protein factory indefinitely, right? And is continuing to produce spike years after they've taken their vaccine. Yes. So that is, so we'll watch out for that. One of the other things we asked, this was a question we actually asked in our 2023 worldwide survey, Nick. We asked, have you noticed an increase in infant deaths? And we asked them, obviously, for the first half of 2025 and this year, compared to 2019 and prior. I was a little shocked by this. 39% of the embalmers said they have seen an increase in infant deaths in the year 2025 compared to the years 2019 and prior. That's not a good... Yeah. And as you know, the spike protein from the vaccine has been found in the delivered placentas after the woman delivers a child. It's also been found in the breast milk from women. So we know that the spike protein from the vaccine, unfortunately, is getting through to the infant. Next slide.
Yes, as well as the mRNA is transferring through the placenta, unfortunately. And then these fetuses, these babies are going to be producing the spike. And for all we know, some of this reverse transcribed DNA, some of these DNA contamination plasmids, the spike producing plasmids, SV40. Yeah, we don't know what it's doing to these babies, to these unborn babies. And that this is possibly a reflection of that, but again, we can't say without further investigating these specific increases in deaths.
Right. So we asked him, what percentage increase have you seen in the infant deaths in 2025 compared to the years 2019 and prior? And if you average, if you don't include the green bar, if you just average the blue bar and the yellow bar together, you get a 14% increase in infant deaths in 2025 compared to the pre-COVID years for just those that saw the increase. So still alarming though, right? Not a good trend.
Yeah, we do not want infant deaths to be increasing whatsoever.
We also asked the same question that we asked back in our 2023 survey about age stratification. And we asked them, check what age groups check all that apply. Did you see an increase in the number of clots of any type, whether it be grape jelly, white fibrous, or micro-clotting in 2025 when compared to the years 2019 and prior? And the good news is very few of them answered 0 to 5 years or all the way up to 20 years old. In fact, all the way up to 35 years old. Actually, yeah, I have enough. I'm sorry, that's the 9 there on that bar. That bar actually applies to the 36 to 50-year-old category. It's not on the screen, but that's what it applies to. So you see that there's a huge jump between 21 to 35-year-old. They just had one embalmer answered that, but then 9 of the Tennessee funeral directors and embalmers answered that they saw an increase in the 36 to 50-year-old category. And then it's 17 for 51 to 65-year-olds, 10 for 66 to 80-year-olds, and then 2 for anybody above 80-year-old. Now that is alarming to me, that 36 to 50-year-old bar, that one that with the 9 there next to it. And basically, it dovetails very closely with Edward Dowd's work, right? He's been looking at this from a completely different angle, death and disability insurance data. And he noticed a tremendous increase in death and disability in the 36 to 50-year-old age group starting in the third quarter of 2021, which just happens to be when the COVID vaccines were mandated, by a lot of companies. We know that Joe Biden tried to, he mandated them on the military, the government civilians, and the defense contractors, but he also tried to mandate them on any company that had more than 100 employees. Now, we know the Supreme Court eventually shot that down, but a lot of companies acted preemptively, and they made their employees get shots anyways. And Dowd noticed this tremendous, I think it was like a 40% rise in death and disability in that age group of 36 to 50-year-olds starting in the third quarter of 2021. And it kept on for, about a year or so after that. So this dovetails closely with Ed's data. And, you don't usually expect a 36 to 50-year-old person to have a stroke or heart attack, right? That usually doesn't happen until they're in their late 50s, early 60s at the earliest. So, again, very concerning here that these kind of people, 36 to 50-year-olds, are winding up on embalming tables with these clots in them.
Yeah, not normal whatsoever.
No. We always offer the embalmers a chance to comment in more detail if you want to in a written section. Next slide. We only got 3 of the 28 that responded of the Tennessee embalmers. Only 3 of them had comments. One said, we have seen an increase in stillborn deaths. Most are around 19 weeks. Comment 2 was, saw several white fibrous clots structures in 2023 and 2024, but none this year. So that person answered no on the survey at the beginning of the survey, right? Even though he has seen them in past years. He just has not seen any in 2025. But have done less embalming this year than the past few years. Also, we don't get a lot of infants. And some funeral homes will get more than others because some funeral homes actually offer to do the funeral for an infant for free because they out of compassion for the grieving family. So those are the funeral homes that tend to get more of the infants than the ones that charge. And comment 3 was, I do not do very many embalmings or burials. That's why I don't have many young people. So that's it for that survey.
So that's very concerning, this survey, that there are still a majority of embalmers seeing the white fibrous clots in corpses in 2025, 4 years after the mass mRNA injection campaign began. And so now we're going to touch on a bit Kevin McCairn's work of what exactly do these white fibrous structures look like and what are they?
Yeah, because the information we just got, the embalmers raising their hands, the surveys we've done over the last 3.5 years, pretty much proved conclusively that this phenomenon is happening. It's hard for the naysayers to say this isn't happening. We've got the physical samples of the clots, we've got the surveys done, but the naysayer could still say, okay, I concede the fact that embalmers like the Tennessee embalmers and all these others around the world are indeed seeing your clots you're talking about. And I'll concede that they're seeing a lot of these too, that they're prevalent. But that doesn't mean that the COVID vaccine is causing these things, right? Well, here we've got some evidence, it's pretty strong evidence, Nick, that's showing that the spike protein, either from the virus or from the vaccine, can cause these things. This is a photo that came out of a paper that appeared in Nature last August of 2024 by Rue and colleagues. The name of the paper is actually called Fibrin Drives Thromboinflammation. But in this, I think it's figure 1 in this document, there's this photograph, and it shows on the left there what our natural human plasma looks like, what the fibrin in our plasma looks like, is supposed to look like, right, in the normal clotting process. We all have this natural protein for blood clotting called fibrinogen produced by the liver. And whenever there's damage done to the endothelial lining of our inner walls of our blood vessels, veins, and arteries, it triggers the clotting response. And it triggers the conversion of that liquid fibrinogen into this white solid called fibrin. And it's supposed to look like smooth spaghetti noodles like you see on the left there. And they form kind of like a net. And they collect our red blood cells and our platelets, and they form a clot, when you have a cut on your arm, for example, so you don't bleed out to death. So when that cut is finally healed, then another enzyme that we have called plasmin comes along, attaches to the fibrin, breaks that clot down, and then you're good to go again. Well, look what happens on the right when our fibrinogen comes in contact with the spike protein, either from the virus or from the COVID vaccine. It becomes a twisted mess. The fibrin looks all messed up and twisted. It's got these nasty nodules on it. And then it becomes difficult for our enzyme plasmin to attach to that clot and break it down. So that's when you get these long, gigantic white fibrous clots forming, because the clots tend to grow and persist. Now go to the next slide. This is a scanning electron microscope image of a embalmer's clot that Richard Hirschman sent to Dr. Kevin McCarran over in a neuroscientist in Japan. And I think you've shown this before when you interviewed Kevin. Look at that. That's what the white fibrous clot removed from a corpse looks like at 5,000 magnification under a scanning electron microscope. Look how twisted that fibrin is. Look how many nodules are on it. Does it look more like the smooth spaghetti, Nick, or does it look more like the fibrinogen in combination with spike?
Yeah, it looks like that mangled barbed wire looking fibrinogen like we see when it's exposed to spike. Look at that. So everybody look right now at the screen. Look at the right. Look at the barbed wire type mutilated plasma. And then let's move forward to boom. This is one of the white fibrous clots. Looks very similar.
Bingo. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that's at 5,000 magnification. This one here is if you back it out to 1,000 magnification, that's what it looks like at 1,000 times the embalmer clot. So it's just a mangled mess. I mean, it's obvious there's no way that our plasma is going to be able to attach to that thing and break it down. And the result is these nasty rubbery clots. Okay, I think we can stop the shows now. So, to me, it's a slam dunk, Nick. We have visual evidence, this way at the eye level, right, that these clots exist. We have visual evidence at the microscopic level. We have humans at a, official state funeral director association convention saying this is happening. These embalmers, they've been embalming for 20, 30 years, never seen this phenomenon until the last 5 years, the years of COVID and the vaccines. To me, it's just a disgrace that our CDC, our FDA have not been looking into this. They know, they have to know by now this is a problem, Nick. It's now that we've got Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy, Marty Macri, Jay Bhattacharya in charge of these organizations now, they should be going out and doing something about this. So I'm challenging them, hey, this retired Air Force major wants to stop doing this for you. I want the CDC and FDA to actually go do their own job for a change and look into this.
Right. They should do their work. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. They're not doing exactly what's in their name, right? They're not looking at this new disease. In fact, they're just completely ignoring it. And so, like you said, we have now real embalmers, majority of them saying they see it. We have microscopic biochemical analysis of the clots. We have a bunch of science to back up that the spike does indeed cause this protein misfolding, these amyloidogenic fibrils. We have all this evidence now, and so it's clear as day that it is in fact real and it is in fact prevalent. And so, yeah, we do call for our regulators, for our public health authorities to do their job and actually investigate this, which appears to be affecting a large proportion of the human population. And it's very bad. And we got to address it, and we got to start to reverse it and find out ways how to remove these properly from living humans, and find out exactly how many living humans do have these white fibrous clots. So Tom, is there anything else you want to tell our audience today before we end the live stream?
Just to piggyback onto what you just said, we know it's happening in the living as well. You know, I've tried to run surveys with vascular surgery societies, vascular surgeons, cath lab workers, endovascular specialists who refuse to take my surveys, but we have several whistleblowers, so we know it's actually happening in the living for the last 4 years. So I thank you, Nick. I couldn't have said that wrap up any better than you just said it. And if people want to follow my work and the work of my survey monkey expert, Miss Laura Kasner, they can go to her Substack at Clotastrophe. It's Laura, Laura, Kasner, Kasner .substack.com. It's a free Substack. So please, people, check it out. And once again, one last time, I'm challenging the FDA, the CDC to get on the ball and do something about this. This is serious.
It is serious. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing this vital information. And I will be sharing it widely, and hopefully we can finally get some acknowledgement from our authorities. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick.